Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming along. It's wonderful to see everyone here for this chat we have this evening between the brilliant Rachael Smith and Jimmy Aquino, talking about Rachel's, well, perhaps talking about a few other things too, but particularly talking about Rachel's brilliant book, Wired Up Wrong. I know we saw perhaps a few of you at the launch of Rachel's Quarantine Comics, the book that Icon were privileged to publish last year. Let's hope perhaps that the next time we all get together with this, we won't all be sitting in front of our computers, and we can share the cups of tea and the drinks and the other things that we have in real life. That would be nice, wouldn't it? As you probably saw when you arrived on the Zoom chat, this is being recorded. So we have the opportunity for other people to watch this, and for indeed for you to watch it back later on. I wanted to introduce myself first of all. I'm Andrew. I work at Icon Books, the proud publisher of Rachel's books, as I said before, Quarantine Comics and Wired Up Wrong. The reason that you keep coming back, I'm sure, to listen to Rachael and follow her on Twitter and Instagram and so on, is the same reason that we continue to publish her work. Rachael is lovely to work with and creates beautiful and insightful work that has a real impact on people's lives. I'm sure many of you will testify to that. It's really identifiable and relatable. Wired Up Wrong is the first book in a trilogy, in fact. And while this book was crowdfunded into print previously, this edition, which Icon are proud to publish, has brand new pages not published anywhere else. In addition, as I say, it's a trilogy, so we're really excited to be continuing to publish her. At the end of this year, the next book in the trilogy, which is called Stand in Your Power, again, previously crowdfunded, but with additional brand new material, will we publish. And then this time next year, we'll be getting even more excited for a brand new title, which completes the trilogy full of never before seen content, a book called Glass Half Empty. As you'll all know, Rachael has been amassing fans as she continues her rise to mega stardom. As well as the famous faces of Chris Addison, Adam Buxton, Kate Beaton, Kieran Gillen. Wired Up Wrong has been one of our first books, one of Icon's first books to successfully enter Book TikTok, which we're so excited to see what else Rachel's books there can do. Just a little bit of housekeeping for this evening. We're here till around about 9 o'clock. You'll have seen that you're all set on mute as you entered this conversation. Please stay on mute for the time being, if that's all right. Although you'll have plenty of chance to clap, perhaps, and holler and cheer toward the end. As it said on the little card that was up a minute ago, by all means, please post any questions you have for Rachael, and indeed, or Jimmy, maybe, in the chat. And then my colleague, Temi, who's beside me at Icon here, will be picking out questions for Jimmy to answer in the session at the end. So thank you very much again for Rachel's brilliance and coming along. Thank you very, very much in particular for Jimmy Aquino for being Rachel's interviewer this evening. So without much further ado, I'll hand over to both of them. And I very much hope you enjoy the evening.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Hey guys, I'm Jimmy Aquino with the long-running comics podcast called Comic News Insider. We cover comics, TV, film, and pop culture since 2005, weekly show. And through that, I met my dear friend Rachael Smith, who we're having on here for Wired Up Wrong, and it is a fantastic piece of work. Rachael, what's up?
Hi, not much.
Now, in 2017, you self-published the original Wired Up Wrong, and it was wildly successful and put you on the map, as they say. How did this come about with now Icon Books is publishing it, a new edition with new pages, as Andrew said? How did this all come about?
Well, yeah, when I self-published Wired Up Wrong, it was just me in my living room, putting the books into jiffy bags and by myself. So it was very small run that I did by myself. And of course, because it was just me, I didn't have the kind of chops to get it in bookshops, or you know, it was just in comic shops where I knew the people that worked there, really. But we ended up selling a lot of them, despite, you know, me not being very good at distribution. And we sold so many of them that we thought, well, actually this deserves a proper go at getting into bookshops and different countries, because I didn't have the the way of getting it into different countries and everything. So yeah, Icon very kindly offered to do that for me. So it's been really nice. I feel like the book is getting the release that it deserved in the first place. So yeah.
For sure, well deserved indeed. For those that don't know, can you tell us a little bit about the book and why you decided to do it?
Sure. I started out making comics about my kind of mental troubles. I suffer from anxiety and depression. And I put a few comics online, and people really resonated with a lot of people. So I then put Wired Up Wrong together, and it did so much better than I thought it would. I thought people would read the book and be like, "Oh, Rachel's a bit weird," and then have a bit of a laugh about it, maybe put it in their bathroom or whatever. But people really were coming up to me saying that it really helped them, or that it helped them be able to talk to people that they knew were afflicted with these things, or the other way around. They found it easier to talk to people about how they were suffering. But basically, it's an autobiographical book about my kind of weird coping strategies with depression, and just how I navigate through life with these troubles. Yeah.
What is it about autobio that appeals to you?
I love other people's autobio stuff. I love getting that glimpse into people's lives, and I like sort of learning about people in that way, the sort of minutiae of their lives, like what they eat, and I don't know, like how they take their kids to school, like all that kind of stuff. Like people, have wildly different lives than me. I just find that quite, I don't know, it's a bit like, I used to love that program Through the Keyhole, where you get little glimpses into how people live. I just love that, and what people choose to put out there in comics, I find really fascinating. So
yeah, well, you certainly have a very fascinating life that many people were intrigued by and drawn to, as well as myself, and I'm lucky enough to call you a friend, and it's fantastic to see this work put out there. I know that there are some added new pages to this edition of it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a few new pages. There's a funny section where I try to go to sleep by counting sheep, but the sheep become really stressful. That's a good one that I enjoyed drawing. There's one where I freak out because I think this is something a lot of people struggle with, especially during COVID and everything. We had so many different ways to talk to one another on WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and texting. I actually got a bit overwhelmed with it all and I just didn't look at my phone for a while. And then I got really, really guilty that I hadn't been replying to all the messages, and just the longer I left messages, it just got stressful. And then of course you message your friends and they're just like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. I'm really glad to hear from you." But you've built it all up in your brain as this horrible thing, all your friends are going to hate you. So there's a couple about that. Yeah.
I think we all kind of went through that, too, where it was you get in that mode of, well, it's been a week now, well, it's been a month now, well,
it takes so little as well.
It
takes so little for me to just assume everyone hates me. And apparently that's not uncommon.
It's also definitely not the case. So,
I hope not.
Like so many others who suffer from mental health, like myself, as you know, we've talked about a lot. I heavily identified with the book. You make it very clear that you're not a doctor or a therapist, though. One, why not? No. But why did you decide to be so brutally honest about your mental health?
I think it's selfishly, I find it very cathartic to put it out there. And it's the same way if you have a big problem and you talk about it, then it becomes not just your thing anymore. I guess and then the non-selfish answer is that I realized that it might help other people. I realized that what I was going through was actually, not uncommon, and a lot of people were having these feelings who had, any degree of depression or anxiety. and had a lot of the same coping mechanisms as well, or found my ideas helpful to combat those feelings. So yeah, a mixture of the two. I wish it was all like unselfish, but there was definitely like this
We're
is really
allowed to be
helpful.
selfish. We're allowed to be selfish. It's all right. So you mentioned, what are some of those coping mechanisms, maybe rituals or advice you can give to people? Again, not a doctor, but just your personal,
Definitely not a
things you've
doctor.
gone
Please
through.
please go and see your doctor. Don't just read my book.
Yeah, right. Do both. You can do both.
Do both, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. There's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 coping mechanism, which is like, I'm gonna get this wrong now, but it's like 5 things you can hear, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can, I'm getting it in the wrong order, but that kind of thing.
Right.
Like just being very physical with the world around you is very grounding, and just helps you not, I don't know, float away with your thoughts as much as depression wants you to. I have a really good tip about remembering to take your meds, which is always give your cat or dog a treat before you take your meds at the same time every day. And even if you forget to take your meds, your cat won't forget. He'll come and ask for his treat, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I need my treat as well. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. Now I know this all sounds very serious. It's not all doom and gloom, people. It's lots of funny in this book. Very genuinely funny moments. You're not making fun of the situation. You're basically making fun of yourself in a bit. Where do you think your sense of humor comes from, and why did you decide to sort of do the book like that instead of making this very serious topic, make it in all serious?
I mean, there obviously are a lot of very serious texts out there about depression and anxiety, and they are very important. I think just speaking for myself, I think when I am, in a bit of a depressive episode, the last thing I want to do is look at a huge wall of text and read about, what might help me. I just think comics are a lot more digestible in a way, and are just a really nice way of getting an idea across. And so if I can do that with humor as well, I just think it's just giving important information in quite bite-sized, quite sort of yummy pieces that people will enjoy as well.
Deliciously yummy, yes.
It's just so yummy. I don't know why I said that word. You know what I mean, though. Like,
a great word. Come on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you're generally, they're really, really funny stuff in there. People will definitely lol a lot, but also you're generally very funny in person. Where did this this come from? Family? This come from stuff you watch? Any sort of comedy inspirations?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was talking about this with a pal the other day. Like, a lot of people that have mental illnesses end up, if they don't go into comedy, they tend to be quite funny people just naturally. And I think, I don't know, it's almost like that is a coping mechanism. Like humor is definitely a coping mechanism of mine. And I guess the comics are just a way of trying to share that with people. Because, comedy needs, people to laugh at it. So finding an audience is always important as well. But yeah, and if that makes the whole idea more digestible, then I'll be funny about it.
Well, I think that's what also makes it very identifiable, because certainly for me, I tend to, whether it's funny or not, I think it's funny, maybe it's not, but I tend to deflect or represent those feelings where, or hide them at sometimes, by trying to be funny, so I think a lot of people do that, and that's probably why they identify so much seeing this. They're like, oh my God, I've done the same thing, or I put my foot in my mouth at the wrong place at a wedding or something like that, which that's a great one. I don't want to I'm teasing little bits, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, I think that's a very common sort of coping mechanism, but you do it so well. It's so funny and so good.
Thanks.
So of course, yeah. Again, we don't want to give too much away if people haven't read it, but there are some other characters in the book that are not human. Can you talk about them, like Barky or Brian and things like that?
Yeah, so Barky represents my depression and kind of all the bad stuff in my brain. And yeah, I draw him as a big black dog. He's meant to be a dog. People have told me he looks more like a cat or a rabbit. He's just a big shape, a big animal shape. And I stole that from, I think it was Churchill who coined the phrase, my black dog. But I found it useful to draw him like that, because it's almost shorthand for how I'm doing. So if Barky is if he's very big and kind of tactile, he can stop me doing things and he can lie on top of me and things like that. But if he's very small, then I can just put him in my pocket and go about my day. So yeah, that's good shorthand for saying how I'm doing. He's called Barky, by the way, because I named him when I was quite young. And then, so that's why he's got such a silly name. And then it was just rude to change his name, so I had to stick with Barky. And then Brian and Brian are two game show hosts that live in my brain. And they came about because I kind of realized that sometimes my reactions to things were just really nonsensical. So like I would drop a sock on the floor and start crying, and I'd just be like, why did I do that? And then afterwards be like, a common one I think is when people cry at adverts if they're feeling really like not even plinky plonky sad, please give money to the dogs advert, like an advert for a fridge or something, just really stupid. And you're like, why did I cry about that? So I invented
those
to try and explain
were so beautiful in that.
Such a beautiful fridge. To try and explain that, I made up these two game show hosts who have a big wheel that's called the Wheel of Feels, and they would just spin it and it would go on an emotion, and I would just have that emotion. But yeah, they have
that Wheel of Feels is great because there's about 8 or 10 feelings on that wheel.
Yeah.
And one of the more popular one is horny and confused. I'm like, okay, yeah. Definitely been there. Any others you might go back in if you ever brought them back? Like let's say we did a Brian and Brian spinoff. Any other sort of wheel
maybe
additions?
I haven't really thought about it. Yeah. Yeah, Brian and Brian could definitely come back for that. There's some emotions we haven't really explored.
Exactly. So with Barky, he's very interesting because, as you said, he's either really big or can be really small. And again, I think many people identified, and I certainly, that one panel stuck with me. And I have the piece, thank you very much, where you're fully dressed and ready to go out, and he's just blocking the door, telling you to stay home. And like, ooh, boy, if that happened to me, you know. Like again, what are, when those situations like that happen, what are some of those, like something like that would happen, what would you do?
It's hard. I mean, I drew those pages because to sort of have a response to people who say, well, why don't you just get up, just get out of bed, just leave the house, I don't understand. And those people don't understand that it is a physical like thing that you feel. You are like frightened of what's out there, and sometimes it is, you can't move, you're stuck. So that's why I drew those pages, just to explain that it is sometimes impossible. But yeah, one of the coping mechanisms I talk about, I can't remember, this might be in the next book actually, but I'll talk about it anyway. It's the same sort of oeuvre, is catastrophizing. I do that a lot. I'm a very,
I think you mentioned it here. I think,
yeah, like a kind of all or nothing person. Like, if I do something wrong, I hear this voice saying like, why do you always do this? Like, and I don't always do that. I've just made a mistake this one time because I'm a person. But when I catastrophize, so, you know, for example, Barky will get in front of a door saying, you know, don't go out because you'll say something stupid and everyone will hate you. And I'll say, okay, well, that's probably not going to happen. I might say something stupid. I say a lot of stupid things, but probably everyone won't hate me. They'll say, come on, Rachel, you know, and just sort of taking what Barky's saying and making it more realistic is a good way of kind of doing that. And yeah, I'm rambling now. I'm sorry.
No. Barky's a jerk. So, you know,
he is.
Barky's both a big and a little jerk for sure. Yeah, but I want to, there's also like a lot of positivity and hope in this book as well, which is really nice. You give, there's a great section where you give reasons why you shouldn't take your own life, and that's a really great 2-page thing. And there's this, and it can be the smallest things, like, thank God I watch so much TV because I want to know what's going to happen next. So I have something to live for, things like that.
Yeah, there's no
I'm sure
such
that
thing
list
as
is ever changing too. Yeah.
There's no such thing as a stupid reason not to kill yourself. Your
Yeah.
reason could be like, I'm gonna water my plants tomorrow. I'm gonna start a new book tomorrow. Like, you're not gonna get to do any of those things. So whatever you can hold on to, you hold on to it.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I got to see the next whatever, next movie or the next episode of Peaky Blinders, something like that. But or I won't know what's happening. But I've got a really good reason. It's because we love you so damn much. So that's a good one, I think.
I love you right back.
Thank you. Yeah, this book, like I said, it's I can imagine when you're at conventions and people, what are some of the things people come up to you and say after they've read it?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, a lot of people said they found it easier to then communicate with other people about mental health. They kind of had that in, like, the sort of very weird tools, like, oh, my Barky is really big today, is some people have, or like my black dog is very big today. Like, they use those words, which is amazing to hear. And the other way around, people who before they read the book found it really hard to empathize with those feelings, and then seeing them drawn in quite a physical way was helpful to them. But yeah, I get messages a lot from people saying that it really helps them, and that's just amazing. It's made it all worth it.
Yeah, but because I could see it like coming up. I'm sure it's tough for them to approach you at your table, to be like, hey, I deal with the same thing. Have you ever noticed anybody, like, when they're sort of lingering around the table, that you can see that they want to talk to you and they're a little bit shy about it, and you offer some words of comfort or something?
Sometimes, yeah, definitely. I don't know if anyone who's ever come to my table at conventions, I have a very low pressure table. My sales spiel tends to be hello, rather than giving you the hard sale on any of my books. So I am very gentle,
which is nice,
with people, which I just treat people how I would want to be treated at a convention, really. I don't really I don't really like the hard sell when people start shouting at me. But yeah, I've had some really lovely conversations with folks at Comic-Cons, and I guess having, if they've read any of my work, they'll know that I'm going through that stuff as well. So I guess that breaks down barriers between them talking to me.
That's great. Yeah, like I said, I'm sure so many people, and I know just from me talking about it to friends, and I've let people borrow the book many times, and they're just like, oh my God, I identify so much with this. Did you ever find, like, when you first started putting this out, and were really open about your mental health, that some of your friends were like, what? I had no idea. Things like that?
Some of them, my close friends, kind of all sort of knew about stuff. Some of my family found it a bit difficult. They didn't really like me talking about it. Not that they not in kind of a censorship sort of way. They just didn't like to think of me struggling like that, which is fair enough. And I just don't talk to them about it. And they don't read those kind of books from me. They'll be like, when I used to do the Doctor Who stuff, they made it very clear that was okay. We'll read that, but we won't read that stuff. And that's fine, to each their own. But yeah, mostly it's been really, mostly they've been really proud of me for putting it out there to, try and help other people and kind of get rid of the stigma a little bit. I mean, it is a lot better than it used to be, talking about mental health issues and stuff. But yeah, I think there is a little bit of a barrier sometimes of saying, like, hey, look, I need some help. But just asking for help is such a brave thing to do. And hopefully
for sure. Especially in the days of social media, putting it out there, it's so worrisome. You never know how people are going to react to it, and I'm sure you've had to deal with that on both good and bad side of that.
Sure.
When you put this out, what are some of the reactions you've gotten online from people? Stick to the positive.
Yeah, like I say, I get messages a lot from, you know, complete strangers, and now that the book's out with Icon, from people, you know, in the other side of the world sometimes, just saying, look, I you're in my head, like this is really relatable.
Get out of my head, Rachel. Why are you here?
Yeah, but no, it's been, like, I'm happy to say we have not got many horrible comments. It's been
Thankfully,
overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, well, as you said, you know, it was also when you first started doing it, it's very cathartic for you, which I can imagine that must be. So I guess that sort of spurred you on to do more, which is why we have, as Andrew mentioned, we have a sequel, which I hear a really awesome person makes an appearance in. And
yes, Jimmy is in Stand in Your Power.
What? How dare you? I didn't give you my likeness. Right? Can
Please
you tell us anything about the my lawyers will be in touch. Can you talk anything about those, about the sequels, what's coming?
So Stand in Your Power is, again, they're all about mental health stuff. So yeah, Wired It Wrong is kind of a general mental health illness. Stand in Your Power is the same, but I go through a breakup. So it's focuses on love and feeling very lost, and then you know, continuing and trying to remain hopeful when you're single. And then Glass Half Empty, which I didn't know we were going to talk about today. But,
I didn't either. Surprise.
Well, yeah, Andrew said it, so we're allowed to talk about it now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Glass Half Empty is again about mental illnesses, and will be the end of my trilogy. I sound like Tolkien, I wish. But yeah, that will be focusing on my relationship with alcohol, and a little bit about my relationship with my dad, who identified as an alcoholic, and going back to that kind of part of my life, and yeah, exploring that a little bit, how that's
you do certainly touch upon that in this and Wired Up Wrong as well, about some of the coping mechanisms that maybe aren't so good, like drinking and things like that. And we both, like you mentioned your father, I come from an alcoholic family as well, so I think a lot of people will be able to identify that as well, that it just seems like it's an easy out. Let me have a few drinks here and there, you know, forget about everything. Is that sort of what happened with you? You kind of like,
it's an easy out that then charges you rent later down the line. And the rent is often not worth what you what you gave it.
Damn alcohol landlord always wanting the rent. I'm sure. So, and that's the thing. I mean, you see it. We see it in our friends. We see it in ourselves. You know, things like that. Taking, whether it's drink or drugs or some other maybe destructive type of thing. And you talk about how in this book about how hard it was for you to seek out therapy. What was that like when you first started doing it? Like, it seemed to be a struggle to decide to even do it.
Yeah, the hardest part was making the call. I was so frightened. And there's this weird, like, I always felt like I wasn't quite bad enough to warrant getting help. And there's this horrible, like, idea that you have to hit rock bottom, or you have to have done something really stupid. And of course you don't. You can just be struggling a little bit and be like, hey, I think I should talk to someone. And that's and like, there's a part of me that thinks everyone should be in therapy, because, you know, especially after the last 2 years we've had. But the hardest bit for me was making that call. And, you know, after I'd been to the first session, I felt so much better. And I still have therapy once a week today, and can't imagine it without it, really.
Yeah, I'm sure that's like one of the biggest, you know, I still struggle with, like, even to make that call. I haven't yet, you know, and you know, and I'm sure a lot of people are, and that's the thing I weirdly have a lot of psychiatrists and psychologist friends though, but so they all certainly are open to offer me advice, and they're always like, yeah, friends are great, definitely soundboard off of friends, but they're not professionals, you know. So can you talk a little bit about that, like talking with friends as opposed to talking with your therapist? You know, it's definitely a good thing, you know, but they can also, to just rely on it can be maybe not the best.
For sure. I mean, yeah, talking to your friends is amazing. I think the biggest difference for me when I speak to a therapist as opposed to speaking to my friends is you will have to explain everything to your therapist, which sounds exhausting, and it is in many ways.
And
But
boy,
then
let me tell you.
you kind of make connections by yourself in a way while you're talking about things, like to the point where the other day I was like, I kind of what am I trying to say? I tied up two things about my behavior and maybe how I was treated as a child. And I did that just by myself, but I wasn't by myself. It was because I was talking to my therapist and I had to explain another thing, which I didn't think was anything to do with what I was talking about. I really am rambling now, but I hope that's made some kind of sense.
Yes, absolutely. But
and
yeah,
I'm sure once you start making those connections, it's really helpful, and then your therapist will know the kinds of questions to ask you. And yeah.
Yeah, because that's tough. Like a therapy session, like you see it on TV or film all the time. You're not really sure what it is. And there's of course all the comedy of it, where like all they do is say, "Well, how does that make you feel?" You know, things like that. But I'm sure there's a lot more into it than that. And every person's experience is different. What did you find one of the most helpful things? You kind of talk about in the book where they sort of gave you homework and things like that.
Yeah. So in I think I'm doing CBT in Wired Up Wrong, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which was helpful at the time. I didn't stick with that. I ended up finding a more kind of personal therapy that kind of digs down into your childhood and stuff, which I think is more useful for me. Your mileage may vary. CBT might be great for different people. But CBT was helpful at that time, and it does give you a lot of homework to, and I say the word homework, it's really good homework, it's really enjoyable. Yeah, a lot of things to help me relax. I was having real trouble with stress levels and stuff. Yeah, I actually link in the book to one of the exercises that I used to do that other people might find helpful as well. Yeah, it's a little bit kind of ASMR-y, which I respond to quite well as well.
Yeah, same. I love it.
Yeah, love me some Maria, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's different types of therapy as well. I think I talk about a little bit about it in the book as well, so it can seem really overwhelming, but yeah, honestly the hardest part was making that call. And it's been easier.
We'll get to some questions from you guys in a few moments, but I do want to talk a little bit about your art, because I love it. It really fits your work so well. Where did you first start drawing? Where did you first realize you had a talent for it, and how did you develop your style, and how would you explain it? Because I'm terrible at explaining art. So
well, I've always drawn. Ever since I could hold a pencil, I've always drawn. My mum and dad aren't really sure where I got it from, because neither of them are really artistic at all. But yeah, when I was a kid, you just give me some paper and a pen, and that would be me happy.
Nice.
But yeah, and then I studied it at college and university and stuff. But I did kind of painting and things like that, not really cartoons. I came to like cartoons a bit later in life. But yeah, how would I describe it? It's very cartoony and very simple. Like everyone's got big googly eyes and stuff. Like it's not very realistic.
That's all right.
But yeah, I think that helps when you're talking about very serious things to have quite a silly, very cartoony style, I guess. Maybe the two go together quite well.
Yeah, well, you're also really, really great at facial expressions, because that adds to a lot of the comedy too, where it's just like these looks you give to yourself, or genius.
Thank you.
Great.
There's a lot of like silent beats where people just react but don't say anything. They just have this expression.
Which are some of the funniest things, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. It's so great. I could jump into a few questions. They're starting to come in, so I might as well go ahead and jump in. I've got more, but let's hear from some folks here.
We can mix it up.
Yeah, mix it up back and forth. So I've got one. Apologies if I don't. I'm trying to, from Abby, I believe. Back before you started crowdfunding, how did you know you were ready to make a book? That's a good question.
I had enough pages. I don't know. How did I know I was ready to make a book? I had crowdfunded House Party, which was my first like graphic novel, which was a made-up story, so it wasn't about me, although there were bits of me in it. So that was a very different kind of journey to get that book a reality, because I'd sort of written the story and everything. But yeah, Wired Up Wrong, when I crowdfunded it, I kind of just decided how long I wanted it to be. And yeah, seeing the reactions to the comics on like Twitter and things, I thought it would sell. I thought we'd do okay on Kickstarter. I didn't think we'd do as okay as we did, humble brag. But
gangbusters as we did.
So yeah, I just decided how many pages I wanted it to be and then did them. Right. Sorry, it's not a very good answer.
No, that's fine. What advice can you give to artists who would like to sell their comics at comic conventions?
Oh, I would start small, but start now, is always what I say. A lot of folks who want to get into comics, they have these ideas of like these like 7-volume stories, you know, like Game of Thrones or something, which is great, and do that, but don't make it your first project. So for example, I started with my diary comics. I would do one sort of page every day about what happened to me that day, and then I would collect the months and put the months together into little like mini comics, and I would just rock up to Comic Cons with those and sell them.
Just rock up.
Well, I would book a table. I wouldn't just
yes. There are steps we must
kick
take
over someone else's.
You just roll in with your own little like stand table. I'm just gonna put this here in the corner.
But yeah, and then that I sort of very, very slowly built a name for myself like that. But yeah, start small.
Yeah, so on that, because obviously I attend a lot of conventions. I used to table at conventions as a podcaster as well, so I've been on both sides of it. I see you mentioned how you don't like the hard sell and you'd rather greet people. What is some of your advice as a creator behind the table of greeting fans or just passerbys?
Well, like I say, I don't tend to sort of go, hey, let me tell you about this book, like. And that,
you have a great song and dance routine you do. Come on, don't be shy.
No, I do not. Some people do that, and it's great. That's great. Works for them. Perfect. For me, I just kind of like to acknowledge people. I just say hi, and then if they hang around or if they're reading a book, I just say, oh, if you've got any questions. Like, I am very gentle.
That's nice.
Like, I probably should be a bit more, hey, which one are you gonna buy? But I'm not. A bit rubbish.
No, I think that works because a lot of people tend to be very shy, and I noticed this just going, like, say, to go to your table, say hi to you, and people look at it, and they're kind of browsing the work and looking at it, and you could see maybe they want to ask something, or maybe, but then they walk away because they're too shy to say something. So I think the gentle approach is probably really good. But more convention things now that I'm thinking of it, so we haven't been to, at least I haven't been to one. Well, I did go to New York, but that was the first one in like 2 years. But what are some other advice for like just tabling? Like, how should your table look, do you think, is a good presentation wise? Because that's important as well to catch someone's eye.
I guess try and have your comics like stood up. If you can get like little stands from like hardware shops or whatever, and you can stand them up, because I think a lot of people just have them all in piles and people can't really see those.
Yeah.
Try and have things stood up. I drink a lot of water. Seems
nice,
really
like
that's just a good tip for life, but at Comic-Cons it's usually really dry. I don't know why it's always so dry. But drink a lot of water. Try and make time to like see people yourself, like try and take a break from your table and go around
take a break for sure.
Other people's tables. Take a buddy so they can look after your table for you while you like actually have a breather and stuff. Drink water.
Maybe have
Drink a
you
lot of
think
water.
a good banner is a good thing to have, things like that.
Yes, and I feel bad giving this advice because my banner is so out of date now. But yes, have a really up-to-date banner. Do as I say, not as I do, kids.
Oh, I think your banner is lovely. Please.
Thanks.
Like my banner here. There we go.
Your banner looks good. Mine's like half coming out of its moorings at the top. It's got duct tape on it.
Well,
that's how old it is.
you do a
If
lot more
anyone is
conventions than
coming
I
to
do.
the London Con at this weekend, come over and tell me off about my banner. Tell me I should get a new
No,
one.
just tell her how charming it is, you know, with the little patchwork that it is. It's beautiful, I'm sure. Here's a great question coming in. Do you create comics while Barky is large and raging while you're really struggling in real life? Or is it more reflective, creating the work after the fact?
I do try, that's a really good question. I do try and make them while I'm in it, so to speak. There was certainly some of the comics I made for Quarantine Comics. I was like literally crying while I made some of those. Wasn't quite as much of a roller coaster with Wired It Wrong. I think because Wired It Wrong wasn't as topical, whereas Quarantine Comics was. I was very much in the moment of it while everything was happening. But yeah, I mean, I have this thing. If I'm writing as well, I find it very useful to write when I'm in different moods as well. So won't sort of, I'm not the kind of person that goes like, oh, I'll wait until I feel more calm to write about this. I'm very much a believer in doing it there and then. Yeah, and then I just think you get a more honest account of it. Yeah.
Right. So we kind of mentioned this in the top, but just to sort of clarify, what is the difference between this book and the original, besides the additional page? Anything else that's sort of different about it?
It's got a new cover. It's got a few new pages. It's just it's been published by people that know what they're doing. Rather than
there you go. Icon Books. There you go.
Is the biggest difference. It's been really lovingly put together by Icon. It's like they've taken my book and given it like a proper jacket to wear and go out into the real book adult world.
Is it physically the same size, or is it altered a little, maybe larger?
I wanted to keep, I think, we kept the same size just because I think it's a really nice size to just put in your bag or put in your pocket or something. I want it to be a book that you can take with you places.
So another question from the chat here. Have the publishers and agents you've worked with always been sympathetic to your anxiety and depression if it's affecting your work? Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I want to say yes, but I'm trying to think of times. I mean,
hopefully, because if any publisher is like, get over it, you're like, okay, not my publisher. But yeah.
I mean, if they were really horrible about it, I'd be like, maybe this isn't the best home for my book about mental illness.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Icon are very lovely, and I'm not just saying that because they're on the call. They've been really lovely with me.
They're in the house, Rachel. They're in the house.
With me and my book. Did they say agent as well? My agent is also very patient with me. I've certainly cried on the phone to him as well. But yeah, it's odd, isn't it, when you're writing about yourself? They must know what they're getting into a little bit. Like, oh, you're working with Rachel. Okay, she's written 3 whole books about how crazy she is.
Oh, no, not at all.
Everyone
how honest she is, about how real she is, about how much of a person she is. So yes,
everyone has been very lovely. I'm very lucky.
That's great. That's great. Now we first talked about this in 2018 when I came over there in your cute little kitchen in Hampton Bridge. We talked about this book and we did a great long interview there. I did new questions for this, but I have a few. I'm getting actually some from the chat. I'm like, oh, I remember us talking about this, but we didn't talk about it now. So let's bring it up. Someone says, your comics are so honest, but is there anything you shy away from sharing in your comics? Like something you're like, you full on drawn it, written, like, maybe not, or just an idea you've had, you're like, let me scrap that. You feel it's too much or something.
Yeah, I do. It's a good question. I find it a bit difficult to answer in a good way. There are things I won't talk about, but I don't have like hard and fast rules about it. It's very much a case by case basis. Like sometimes I will draw something and then think, oh, this makes me feel a bit wibbly, so I don't think this is going to work. But yeah, it's different. I know I do have a rule. Like if I don't really feel like I should tell other people's stories, so there were some quarantine comics, for example, where I sort of wasn't the main character, and I would draw it and then I would think, actually no, it needs to be from my point of view always, because that's the only point of view I am equipped and entitled to give. Even if I'm saying nice things about the person, I need to do it from my sort of world. So yeah, anything that focused too much on someone else, I would feel a bit uncomfortable.
I see.
That makes me sound so self-obsessed. Like it had to be all about me all the time.
No, not at all. That's why people are tuning in. They want to. That's why when I jokingly yell at my friends on their Instagram, like, I want to see you. I want to see pictures of you. Stop taking pictures of your food and your plants. But no, it's about you. Of course, we want to know. We want to see what's happening in Rachel's life. So another question to go. You touched on this when you mentioned House Party, one of your other works, but I was wondering how your fiction connects or doesn't to your autobio stuff. Like, is Barky related to the rabbit or something like that? You know, from House Party.
Yeah, I mean, my kind of fiction, it does come from a very different place than my autobio stuff does. And the inspirations are really difficult to talk about because I'm inspired by so many things. So yeah, the rabbit again came from a different place than House Party, for example. But there is always something of me in those stories. So in the rabbit, for example, there's a character called Kathy, who is pretty much just me as a little girl. I was very kind of, I think Kathy's a bit braver than I am, but I was very whimsical and very just unfocused, and I was always asking weird questions about the other side of the world, and I was very curious like that, and I was always worried. I was worried about everything when I was a kid. Yeah, I was a strange child. So there's a bit of me in that story in that way. Same as in House Party and Artificial Flowers, there's a lot of me in the character called Siobhan, who moves to London in her younger years and tries to be an artist and finds that very difficult. She finds it a very kind of elitist world for someone like her, very sort of working class from Manchester and stuff. So yeah, a bit of me in there as well. So there's always bits of me in even my fiction, but they do come from a different part of my brain, I think, those stories.
Got it. Not where Brian and Brian are, but another place.
Not where Brian and, well, maybe they, I mean, I don't know, maybe they have a different wheel for these things.
That's right. That's right. You mentioned quarantine comics. Can you quickly tell us what that is for people that might not know?
So I
mean, it's kind of in the name, but go ahead.
Yeah, I drew a comic every day during the 2020 lockdown, and yeah, put them all together. Put them online first, put them on Twitter and Facebook and things. Similar to Wired It Wrong, just about how my mental health was and what I was doing, how I was responding to the news. Barky figured quite heavily in those ones as well. And yeah, my agent my agent pitched it to a few publishers, and Icon very kindly picked it up and again made it look really lovely. Nice. And sent it out into the world in its grown-up book jacket.
Yeah, it's great because that's I think following your quarantine, I know following your quarantine comics, we all were kind of going very similar to, obviously, especially whether you're in the UK or over here in America, we were, physically shut down for 3 months before it started reopening and people going back to work. Same thing over there. You guys were, I think, maybe a little longer than we were, around the same time. So there's definitely those struggles of like, I can't see my friends. I can't, I got to deal with, these people who are being jerks during a pandemic. I gotta, I can't see my significant other. So I think that's certainly many people identified with that, as you showed in there.
Yeah.
What yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, like, a lot of the coping mechanisms people did have for their mental health struggles, a lot of those were kind of taken away by the lockdown and by the pandemic. We couldn't see our friends as much as we wanted to. We couldn't hug people. Like, it was yeah, a bit of a tire fire for anyone with mental health issues, as well as people without. But yeah, a lot of the quarantine comics, I was stuck away from my partner, and that was quite a struggle, not being able to see him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you talked a little bit about this too, where it was just like, while it was nice that we could Zoom or Skype or call or FaceTime, whatever, with friends, it was, I connected with a lot more people that I normally do. Like, you and I definitely did a few times, I remember, and some other friends did as well, but it's like, it's not the same.
No.
Are you finding now, with things reopening, I know I have had some very emotional reunions with people after like a couple of years of not seeing them. Have you already experienced that?
For sure, yeah. Like, hugging my mum for the first time after not being able to for a long time was yeah, I think we both cried. Yeah, just these things that we took for granted that we didn't even realize we shouldn't be taking for granted. We didn't know they were going to be taken away so suddenly. But yeah,
there's been some very sweet moments, I'm sure, because, as you know, I'm a bartender here in New York City, and a couple of my regulars hadn't gone out in 2 years, and they came in one night, and one of them, funny enough, named Rachel, wasn't you, but someone else. She and her wife came in, and Rachel just started crying, and she was like, "Oh my God, to see you and to a place I'm familiar with, and to know that things are, it was really touching." And of course, I started tearing up, and then I'm sure there's been some very, around the world, some very emotional and lovely moments like that. So that's really nice. That's one of the rare good things. So, another question here we have. I first discovered your work from Her Name is Kala comic, if I'm saying that right, and I'm so excited about the Barbarian collab with Matthias. Does music influence your work much? Do you listen while you draw?
Ooh.
Like, what do you listen to while you draw? It's a little addition onto that question.
Sure. I go through phases of music. So we had her song on, if anyone got here a bit earlier, we had a self-esteem song on while people were waiting. And I'm obsessed with her album at the moment. So I listen to music if I'm in the mood, and if I'm coloring. It has to be, I can't listen to music other than that. It's really strange. I don't know why. But yeah, certainly the Barbarians comic is a little collaboration I'm doing with a band called The Burning Hell. And yeah, my comic is based on their song called Barbarians. So obviously that comic is very inspired by music. But yeah, I tend to listen to music more while I'm walking rather than when I'm working. Yeah.
So you don't listen to anything? You say, is it silent, complete silence while you're working? Or
It's
do you maybe
usually
play some ASMR in the background?
Silent, or I sometimes have podcasts on, but they have to be podcasts that I know really well. So it's almost like I just have people around that are talking. It sounds really silly. I put a lot of ASMR
I've heard a lot of
as well.
Yeah.
Nice. I just get a bit lonely sometimes in my studio, so I have like
makes sense,
talking on.
That's fun. I've had a lot of friends, artist friends, some of they listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
And they always yell at me to make mine longer. Like, they need to be longer because I draw for like hours. And I'm like, sorry.
But yeah, if I have music on, I'll end up like singing along to it and getting too into it, and then it'll influence. And
for those that don't know, Rachel does have a lovely voice, so.
It's almost 9 o'clock, everyone, so I think we might have to wrap up there. I'm sure we could keep on talking late into the evening, can we?
Okay.
Late even into your evening, Jimmy. But I don't know about you, but I've really enjoyed the discussion this evening. It's been really wonderful to hear you talk so openly, Rachel, and so honestly. Although I am perhaps the one thing I'm going to take away is using one's cat as an alarm. To remind whether it's take your meds or something else. So thank you very much to Jimmy. Thank you very much to Rachel. Thank you very much to Temi, who's been helping out here, and to all of you for coming along as well. As I'm sure you've seen, Temi's been posting into the chat variously throughout the evening links to buy Rachel's Wired Up Wrong and indeed Quarantine Comics, both of which are available from all good bookshops all around the world. There it is.
Yeah.
There's her copy there as well. So please, when you can, take your time to, I was going to say buy one, but that's not what I mean at all. I mean buy 6 or buy one for you and one for your best friends.
Honestly, if I could jump in real quick, Andrew, if you don't mind, I'm going to buy several because I enjoy giving them out as gifts to friends who really appreciate it. So it is a great idea to buy some for friends because they will
follow
appreciate
Jimmy's example. Yes, absolutely
it.
right. We'll send round links again to buy it, but also the video for you all tomorrow via Eventbrite. I promised, didn't I, at the start that I would unmute everyone and let everyone a bit of a clap and a cheer and say thank you to Rachel. So I will do that now. You're all very welcome to unmute yourself.
I don't want to.
You don't want to see you.
Oh.
And we can all say thank you very much. Fantastic.
Great,
Right.
Awesome.
Thanks very much,
everybody,
everyone.
for joining.
Thank you.
You could also, if you want to find me, we may put this up as an audio podcast as well at comicnewsinsider.com. Check it out there. That's where you'll find me, guys. And thank you, Rachel, for having me. I appreciate it. I feel very honored that you asked me into Icon Books. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I do.